The story of railroads in the Lake Minnetonka area begins in 1867, when the main line of St. Paul and Pacific Railroad, one of Minnesota's earliest, reached Wayzata on the far northeastern shore of the lake. In 1878, the Minneapolis and Northwestern, a railroad on paper only, surveyed a line from Minneapolis through Excelsior on a route that closely hugged the south shore of Upper Lake Minnetonka and Halstead's Bay. This railroad was never built, but another company, the Minneapolis and St. Louis, built a line from Hopkins through Excelsior and Waconia in 1881. This line was built to transport a growing number of summer tourists to resorts along the south shore of the lake, including a branch to the Lake Park Hotel in Tonka Bay, in which the railroad owned a half interest. In 1879, St. Paul businessman James J. Hill and a group of investors purchased the bankrupt St. Paul and Pacific and renamed it the St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Manitoba Railway. Hill also recognized the potential tourist traffic to be generated in the Lake Minnetonka area, and in 1881 built a 6-mile branch line from the Wayzata main line to Spring Park. Hill built 2 hotels along this branch, the massive Hotel Lafayette in 1882 and the smaller Delatero in Spring Park in 1885. Spurred by competition from the Milwaukee Road, which was building into Hutchinson from Glencoe, the Manitoba built another branch line from Hopkins to Hutchinson in late 1886, following the roadbed of the old Minneapolis, Lyndale, and Minnetonka Railway, also known as the Motor Line. The Motor Line was a narrow-gauge railway that had been built 5 years earlier from Lake Calhoun in Minneapolis to Excelsior to carry summer tourists. Traffic levels did not reach expectations, so the right-of-way was sold and the Manitoba replaced the narrow gauge with standard rail. The roadbed west of Excelsior was all new construction. The Hutchinson branch closely paralleled the Minneapolis and St. Louis line west of Excelsior. The 2 lines crossed each other at Zumbra Heights Station. This station was located on present-day Rolling Acres Road, midway between State Highways 5 and 7. Both railroads offered service to the southwestern reaches of Lake Minnetonka. Chaska brick and other construction materials used in the building of lake estates such as Wood End Farm were offloaded at Zumbra Heights. Passengers debarked here for the Palmer House Hotel and other upper lake destinations. As Hill's Railroad expanded further west in the early 1890s, the Manitoba was renamed the Great Northern Railway. In 1893, Hill had achieved his objective of reaching the Pacific Ocean. By this time, summer tourists were heading to new resorts accessible by rail, and the Lake Minnetonka hotels fell into decline. Hill's Lafayette Club was closed at the end of the 1897 season and burned to the ground shortly afterward. The Delatero, which shifted towards more local clientele, survived until 1945. In 1900, it was determined that a shorter route to Hutchinson could be constructed by extending the Great Northern Spring Park branch west to St. Bonifacius, then connect with the existing line to Hutchinson. The extension of this branch line had a profound effect on the business district of Old Mound City, located since 1876 near the north shore of Cook's Bay. New businesses set up shop a mile north to be closer to the railroad. This spurred further development, leading to a new village of Mound being formed in 1912. In 1901, the portion of the Hutchinson branch line between Hopkins and St. Bonifacius was abandoned. The section between Hopkins and Excelsior was later purchased by the Twin City Rapid Transit Company, which ran streetcars on the right-of-way until 1932. Portions of the old Hutchinson roadbed can still be seen west of Excelsior along Highway 7, and a stretch of bike path in Carver Park Reserve follows the old right-of-way. The Great Northern built a small depot at Mound along with a wood frame engine house 19 by 80 feet and a hand-operated turntable. The first depot burned in 1915 and was replaced by a larger building that served passengers and freight until 1967, when it was moved to Surfside Park near Cook's Bay. The electric short-line railway, also known as the Loose Line, was incorporated in 1908 to run a line from Minneapolis to Watertown, South Dakota. This route, the current Loose Line Recreational Trail, skirts the north shore of Stubbs Bay and continues west along the Minnetrista Independence border through Lyndale and Watertown. The loose line rented out converted passenger cars equipped with kitchenettes and sleeping rooms that were brought out from Minneapolis and parked on sidings overlooking Lake Minnetonka. The loose line never went further than Glick, Minnesota, and later was absorbed by the Minneapolis and St. Louis. In 1910, a branch line was surveyed from Stubbs Bay to Mound, but never developed any further. During the summer of 1922, Great Northern passenger trains made 8 daily trips to Mound. The fare from Minneapolis was 80 cents. However, it was not long before the arrival of the automobile and better roads drastically reduced passenger traffic. Great Northern continued limited passenger service, but mostly as part of mixed trains moving both people and freight. The last scheduled passenger train passed through Mound in 1961. The line continued to play a role in moving freight for several years after the merger of the Great Northern into the Burlington Northern in 1971. In 1985, Burlington Northern sold the line to Dakota Rail, which continued to run freight to Hutchinson. A dinner train, the Minnetonka Zephyr, was also run from 1986 to 1989. The Hutchinson branch right-of-way was finally abandoned in 2001 and was converted to the present Dakota Rail Regional Trail, overseen by Three Rivers Parks.